So, an activity I'm going to show you is called Fancy Feet, that I developed and implemented. And this, I think, is an example of an integrated STEM activity where students working in mathematics involving measurement, spatial reasoning, modelling and budgeting, computational thinking, which I've taken very broadly, working with data, systems thinking and modelling, and engineering, design processes, and the fields of engineering. What are the engineering engineers doing in these particular fields, and science. And in this particular activity, the students had a unit on material science, so we were looking in with that. So this was a multi-faceted, multi-step, multi-lesson activity, which we implemented over several days across a couple of weeks, and we called it Fancy Feet, and we explored feet. We showed a bit of the snippet of the Happy Feet 2 movies, and trying to just bring the students into the field of exploring feet, which led to the design of shoes. So just some of the Fancy Feet activity comprised exploring statistically feet measurements, exploring shoe sizes, purposes, popularity, fashion trends, looking at shoe design, including materials. And so the end product of this was creating your own shoes. Now, we started off with some preliminary activities where they explored, in their science unit, they explored materials, the type of material, the type of footwear these materials would serve, what it's made from, whether it's synthetic, and so on. So these students had explored materials in their science unit, and so we then extended that and said, now what materials would you use to keep your feet warm, or to keep your feet dry, to help you run faster and so on. So that was linking back to their material science. And the first part of the activity was a statistical investigation where they explored feet and shoes in the classroom. So they posed questions. What would you like to know about the shoes and the feet and so on in the classroom? And they raised issues such as, what's the most popular type of shoe that the students are wearing to school? Or what material is it made of? What's the most common size and so on? So they posed questions, which that in itself, posing statistical questions, is not easy, because they have to learn to refine those questions to make them manageable questions to collect data. They collected data through designing a survey, collecting the data in their classroom, and then later on they could extend it to other classes. Analysing the data, looking at the notion of mean, mode, and so on, looking at variation, typical, analysing their data, gathering it, representing it however they wanted, and then communicating, sharing, acknowledging that there is some uncertainty in the data we've collected and some uncertainty in our conclusions. So that was the first part, the preliminary activity of exploring our feet, nature of our shoes, material, the fashions, what do we like, what sort of shoes do we like. And I must admit that, I must say to you that these are female shoes, but you can also do with male shoes as well. And I was doing this at a all-girls school where I had implemented engineering education for several years. This was a new study. So, designing and making shoes. We explored shoe design and manufacture of shoes, what's involved in the manufacturing of shoes. The students used the findings from their first activity to help them design and create, actually construct their own shoes. And we had a fancy foot parade at the end. So we brought in engineers. Which engineering fields are involved in shoe manufacturing? So the girls had previously, we had explored a range of fields, and the importance of engineering in shaping our world. So we've got chemical, material, industrial, manufacturing engineers, and we had video clips and so on, we discussed what roles the engineers play in the manufacturing of shoes. Now I hope this works. This is a website which we show the students. It's called The Shoes of Prey, and it was developed by an Australian young lady, researcher. Some of you might be familiar with. You can go online, you can order, design your own shoes. And this girl young lady had a problem. She couldn't find the shoes that she wanted. So she designed. So I won't show all of this, but I'll, hopefully it'll work. Is that loud enough?
I've got secrets in my heart. He's got I'm Jodie Foss, and I'm one of the co-founders of Shoes of Prey. We're a website where you can design your very own perfect shoes. To be honest, I was never really a big shoe lover, and it was mainly because I could never find exactly what I wanted. Either the heel was too low, or it had a bow on it that I didn't like, or it wasn't quite the right colour. So I went travelling, and as I was travelling, in the same way you find someone who can make a tailored suit for you, I found someone I could commission my shoe designs with. So I started to create these shoes, and as my shoe collection became more extraordinary, my girlfriends asked me to commission shoe designs for them as well. And that's when I kind of realised a lot of women could really enjoy this idea. It's such a good feeling when you put on a pair of shoes and you get a compliment on them, and it's something that you've created yourself. It's just wonderful for me. I absolutely love seeing my customers' designs come in and then seeing the finished product and then getting a photo of them wearing them and looking fantastic. We've had brides, bloggers, celebrities, best friends tell us how much they've enjoyed creating their own shoes with us. And I think it's partly because of how easy the process is. So you come to shoesofprey.com, and it all starts with our 3D designer. And you get to choose from 12 base designs, whether it's a ballet flat, a killer stiletto heel for that next party you're going to, a pair of Oxfords to pop down the street in, all actually hand drawn for you once you submit your design to us. Now, once you get into the designer, you choose your heel height, anything from a flat to a Glamazonian 6-inch heel. You can choose your decorations, and you can choose from 170 different kinds of materials. So, as you go through and choose your materials, you can then put a different material on a different part of every part of the shoe.
At least that gives you an idea of what the website was like, and that formed the background for these students, the context for them to develop their own. So we engage the students in modelling, developing, sketching their design of their shoes, selecting the materials, measuring and cutting, assembling, checking the quality, redoing it if necessary, and packing it and shipping it, so on. Now I can't get the mouse. Now this is where we brought in the engineering design model, and the girls were familiar with this. We introduced the notion of, okay, we've got a problem. What is your problem? Jodie's problem, the Shoes of Prey, was that she couldn't find a pair of shoes that suited her. So she set about solving that problem. And this is with engineering. We've got problems where engineers have to solve the problem. And so they are engaged, the students were engaging in the problem, and they had to work out, what is the problem or the aim of their shoes, which I'll come to in a minute. Brainstorming ideas, experimenting, because we initially didn't have experimenting, but when we have a lot of our activities involve materials, and students like to experiment with the materials, design, develop a design, build it, test it. Is it meeting your aims? Looking at your solution, redesigning. Designing your own shoes. We ask the students in groups, now you've got to identify a shoe problem or a need that your group has identified. So what it is about shoes, you're going to design your own shoes. Is there a problem? For example, I might say, well, I don't like the way my shoes are designed, they're too high or too low or whatever, so they had to identify a problem. Then there were 3 aims. We said, well, now we'd like you to create 3 aims that your shoe design is to achieve. How will now you have your aims, your design, how will you test to see if your design meets each of these aims? How will you know if it passes the test? What criteria are you going to use? And so they brainstormed their ideas, they chose an experiment with materials, they looked at the design constraints. Now the design constraints included the materials were available. We provide a range of materials, but there was a limit to what we could provide. Looking at the properties of materials, if you want to make shoes that are waterproof or whatever, they have to carefully select the material, and they could test it by going outside and putting in water and all that sort of thing. The appropriateness of the materials, they appropriate materials for your shoes, and the costs, because we gave them a budget, and the time frame. So they had a range of things like we provided, to get all the material together, sandpaper, plastic, non-clip matting and so on, and then the cost, and they working columns, and they had to keep tab of their. Then they created their design, they looked at their initial problem, their 3 aims, and they're testing their first design. Did the design, the measurements and the materials, did they meet your aims? And they had to rate their product, so according to the criteria of the design, the measurement and the materials. So did it meet those the criteria, the aims well, low or high? Okay, and then we gave them the opportunity to redesign. Okay, you tested it, perhaps your shoes weren't entirely waterproof, or perhaps you found yourself slipping, or perhaps they were uncomfortable. And it's amazing what some of the children came up with. Like some wanted to make, put wheels on their shoes, others created, I'll show you, wedges, wedge shoes and everything. So they had to look at their properties, the purpose, the comfort, and the costs involved. Were they economical in what they were doing? Well, here I'll just show you a few designs, and it's amazing what the girls came up with. And as I said on Wednesday, and some of the teachers who were there agree with me, those students who don't succeed, I don't know what I'd say, those who don't, whose potential for learning doesn't come through in testing. When you get them to do activities like this, it's amazing. Like there was one girl that I was working with, and Paul McKay, the teacher, said, she struggles. She struggles with maths. She struggles with the testing. Boy, did she create shoes. She had this wedge design where she was, and I didn't expect them to create, but she actually had, the way she put in the cardboard and the support and so on, she created a lovely pair of wedge shoes. So there's another one to read, and they had to explain if they added a bit of support and they replaced the sponge or whatever. Another one that you can see there that's got the heel and the bit of support and the side view and etc. And then the student, and this is the second design where they improved it and measurement, make it fit, make it pretty, make it stronger. Cardboard will go in there to make it stronger and so on. A couple of others, that was just a design, that was just brainstorming. And then you can see they decided they're going to have the strap at the back and some ribbon, and so that was student C's first design. And the second design, what they've done is they've added blue ribbon, they've added support there in the heel, there was added support, blue ribbon in the middle, and what have they got? All the blue addition was for beauty, but there's also added support. Okay, so after they've tested and so on, they design new shoes, and they had to rate their second design as being whether they met their aims. And then an important part of these activities is students' reflections on what they've done and then reporting back. So we asked them, how did the aims of the shoe design influence your choice of materials? How did experimenting with materials help you? How did drawing with your design help you? And what problems did you encounter? Did testing and rating your shoe help you improve? With your first activity, where you explored the different shoes and feet in your classroom, how did that help you create and design and create shoes? And what have you learned about the engineering design process and engineering? Okay, just some examples. How did your design help? It helped me because at the start I was thinking, what on earth am I going to do? But I would have just done randomly. And the students were coming to appreciate how design processes helped structure their thinking, and rather than just rushing in and creating anything, they appreciate the fact they designed, they tested, and to see if their aims were met. So, how did testing and rating your shoe help? And the student says, well, we were testing if it would slip or not, like if the material was good to use for grip. I put it on to see if it would work, and I looked at my aim 1 and it said, does it feel comfortable? Then aim 2, run in it, and I did, and then aim 3 was to be able to dance in it, so she wanted to be, grip, to be comfortable and be able to dance in it, and I tested all those out, and then it just, every time it just slipped off. So I decided maybe we should use more of a gripping material. So they realised through prancing around, it was quite hilarious to watch them prancing around with their shoes. So, and then how they're testing, the next one, and the rating. When you rate something, you have to check out everything. You have to make sure you know every little corner, so it might help you find out the problem. So the students are appreciating and realising that designing and rating ideas, the activities they're doing, applies not just to mathematical problem solving and modelling, but it applies to other fields as well. How did the first activity help you? Well, some students were saying, well, I realise that a lot of students like closed shoes. Well, a lot of students prefer to have leather shoes or whatever. And the next one, what have you learned about the engineering design process? And this student says that if you probably don't go through that whole process, then your shoe wouldn't be as good as it could be because you haven't. You might not have tested, and you need to test it. And if it's not to its best potential, you could like redesign and make another one, and then you might have the shoe that you want to start off with. These, by the way, were grade 4 students, 8, 9-year-olds, 9.5. And I won't go all through this, but what they can then do is they can create with engagement model adaptation, where they can use the Shoe of Prey website that you saw on that video clip, and they can actually just work out now what shoe and what do I want, what type of shoe do I want, what heel do I want, what colour, what's my budget, because those Shoes of Prey the Shoes of Prey are not exactly cheap. So they can then go online, and I don't know whether this is going to work, but let me see. Hang on a bit, get started. Looks like it's not going to. Oh, yes. No. Looks like it's not going to work, but that doesn't really matter. What they can do there is they can go onto the Shoes of Prey website and actually create virtual designs. So they can choose, as you could see in that blog, in that DVD snippet, they can choose the shape of the shoe, the material, the height of the heel, whether it's strapped or strappy, whether it's open shoe, it's closed, and whatever. They can choose the colours, and you can make amazing Technicolor shoes if you want to. So they can then go on and do this virtually, and of course apply look at the budget, track the budget, because when you add all the fancy stuff, the budget goes up. So that is a good website as a model extension and adaptation, and you can apply that to other as well. And that's just creating the custom shoes, which I've already spoken about. And lastly, before I just leave you with a few questions to consider, developing 21st century skills in fancy feet. As you can see, I've tried to bring in as much. I probably need more technology in there, but I've tried to bring in the maths, the science, the engineering, and also developing these skills of critical thinking, looking at their product critically, testing it out, problem solving, inquiry, design process, teamwork. They had to work in teams, they were working in groups, leadership, so they had to make sure that they knew one could perhaps lead the other or whatever, Communication. What we do with the students is when they've created their models and that, we have them report back to their class. And in this case, we did have a fancy foot parade. I'm really needed to show you, but we actually set up and they walked along and they described, they told everybody, now this is our shoe design, this is what we did initially, these are some of our problems, this is how we strengthened, we improved it and so on. They developed creativity, adaptability and entrepreneurship, because they could see how we can design and create, our own shoes.